Yeah, so basically, about a year before Graham and I got married, he had this episode where he I woke up one morning, collapsed on the floor. They didn't know what it was, thought it was a stroke. Took him a few months to get better. He wasn't allowed out of hospital until he could walk one foot in front of the other. But yeah, he got better. Then we met and got married. Everything was fine. And then a few months after our wedding, he had another episode of this weakness. And it was only a couple months after our wedding, and he said to me then, he said, this happened to me before, and you didn't, it kind of, paraphrasing, you didn't sign up for that. Like it's a get out clause. If you want to walk away now. Obviously we're newly married, so we still love each other then. Yeah, it was fine. And then he got better. And then about 3-4 years into our marriage, we had our first little baby. I was on maternity leave at the time. It happened again. And so he told his employer, this has happened before, it'll just be a few months and I'll be back on my feet. But he wasn't. And at that time, he went from being, his job, he was like a supervisor. One of his jobs was he would they would like in warehouses, they would do all the scaffolding, and he'd be climbing up the top of these big scaffolding things and checking that everything was done right and that kind of thing. And he went from that to actually being on 2 crutches, on 2 sticks. So
before you go on any further, so how were you feeling at this point?
Yeah, we talked about this, didn't we? Well, it was a little bit scary. I'm really old-fashioned, so I wanted to stay at home, look after my children. And when we had children, I wanted, send the man out to work, the little one stays home. I was totally okay with that. That's why I didn't really want a career, and that's what I wanted. So it was just like it just happened. And it was like, okay, well, we'll just deal with it and we'll take care of it. I didn't really think about what life would look like. We just kind of processed it, and it was scary. And we had people coming to the house to look at our house and look at what modifications we would need. And I don't know, I think, actually I do know. I think I just went into like fight or flight mode or whatever. I just went into okay, right, I need to just take care of this. I didn't even consider my feelings. So I know you're probably going to ask me a few times, how did you feel? My feelings really came out after Vox, if I'm honest. I went through the process of doing what I needed to do to take care of him. That's kind of where I was at then.
So what did that mean, taking care of him? What did that actually mean?
So to start off with, it was if you lose something that you've fit in your physical body that you've had for so long, it's such a massive shock to your system that it's like he couldn't do anything. So washing his hair, he couldn't lift his arms up. So his weakness is down his left side. He'd lift the right arm up, but it's a bit awkward. But he struggled washing his hair.
So you were washing his hair for him?
Yeah. So he would struggle sometimes with brushing his teeth because he wouldn't be able to, wouldn't have the strength to keep his head still. So things like that. And you just make little adaptations, to things. So there was that. Sometimes he couldn't put his socks on. Talk about just changing your pair of socks, or talk about that later. But he couldn't put his socks on. He couldn't do buttons up. He didn't have the kind of dexterity. So you're talking every morning. Sometimes it would be like lifting him out of bed because he couldn't, if he'd rolled wrong in the night or something, he couldn't get up. So it was real everyday things. He would make a meal and I'd push his plate to him and I'd have to cut up his food. But again, I'm just in helping mode. I'm just in do it mode. I'm not in how does this affect me? How does this make me feel? But that was my life, and then we had more children. I wanted a big family, but I wanted a big family. It didn't matter that I was taking care of him. It was oh, okay, I want just add that on to everything. So it was just kind of, and it, looking back, I was like a robot or something, just kind of doing all these things. I remember setting him up. I'd go out to work in the morning, I'd set him up for the day with a jug of drink so that he didn't have to go to the kitchen and get anything and struggle. So he'd literally park him on the sofa, there's your jug, there's your drink, there's your snacks, what you need, or I'll be home at this time, or, you know, it was just very, it was just, that was just how it was.
And with the children, how was he with the children? Was he able to help you with them?
So I could never leave them with him. He could never take them out on his own, because so over time he managed to, so I said at the beginning it was a real shock. So he was on 2 crutches, but over time he managed to kind of get himself where he got used to it, and your body compensates. So he would, he just, like, at the right side kind of overcompensated for the left, so he just got to 1 stick. But he couldn't go out with them, especially if they were younger, because there was fear of them running off. He couldn't grab hold of them. He had a stick in his good arm, the left arm was weak. He couldn't run after them if they did run off. So like I had to think about their safety and so things like that. So I didn't really get a break in that regards. But, you know, yeah, I don't know, they couldn't, you know, so he didn't like football anyway, but he couldn't go out and play football with them. He couldn't go play catch with them, you know, he didn't have the coordination to do those kind of things. I mean, he couldn't even peel vegetables.
My husband could never peel vegetables.
Well,
but
I was going to add on.
To.
I was going to add a caveat on, but you've got to bear in mind he's also a man, and not to be, you know, but some men just like, oh yeah, I can't do that. But yeah, it's, you know,
yes,
it was difficult for them. They had never known anything different though.
No,
so
but
I mean,
you were still working at part of this time?
Yeah, so I worked part-time on and off while the children were little, just, you know, depending on what I was having at what time. The one thing I was going to say is that, you know, it was really hard on the children. So if he did ever come to school and pick them up, and when they were younger, he would go into he'd get out of the car and go into the playground. And people would make comments about, oh, your dad's a granddad, or your dad has a walking stick. And I know they found that really hard, you know, really hard. And it's not nice. Kids aren't very nice, but, you know, again, they didn't know any better. So it was just, you know.
And were there times in the darkness of the night when you woke up in the middle of the night and you were thinking about the future?
There wasn't really a future. Like, there wasn't any... well, of course, it's a future, but like it was nothing different. Well, you know, it was, you know, I just have to carry on. There wasn't like it's never going to get any better. In fact, it's going to get worse. The chances are he's going to be permanently in a wheelchair. The chances are you're gonna, you know, he's deteriorated, because what happened with his health is he would kind of start here. I'll get my hands in the camera a bit, and then he would have an episode, and then he'd get better, and it'd only come up to here, rather than where he was, and then he'd have another episode and then get a little bit better, another episode and get a little better, and he's getting further away from that starting point. So it was always deteriorating. It was a deteriorating condition. So it was like, well, no, it was never going to get better. When was I going to have to retire early so that I would be, you know, full-time carer, because he couldn't do anything? We didn't know what was going to happen, and so I didn't really think about it. I just thought about all the things I had to do, you know, and I'm supposed to just get on with it.
And when the consultant said, "There's nothing we can do, you're just going to have to get on," and
so you know what, that's been one of the biggest frustrations, is the fact that, you know, going to be all controversial now, but you trust the doctors to have answers, and that's what you realise they don't. I mean, with conditions like this, especially when it affects the brain, you know, well, not just the brain, I suppose, when they can't actually physically see inside you as clearly as they can see on the outside, they don't know what's going on. And I remember he had multiple tests, and it was such a frustrating thing. And I do remember, you know, just being in hospital, and you're always waiting for the doctor to come or the test to come, and you're there for days, and like, it was just so frustrating. But I remember the last neurologist he saw, and actually he was the most helpful of all the neurologists in terms of diagnosis, and he said to him, like, we know it's not a hardware thing, because you're still using your arm and you're still using your leg and your body still works. It's a software thing. So if we could just turn you off like a computer and turn you back on again, that maybe if we reboot you, that maybe it would be okay. Okay, thanks, that was really helpful. Okay, we're going to go away and take that little nugget into our lives. Yeah, so that was the last kind of consultant we saw. And then they go, off you go, live your life, have these pills. Oh, and if those pills start to damage you, there's these pills you can take too, and then there's these other ones you can take for this thing. And then it's pills, it's just, yeah, that's
and
it.
how long did that go on for, Nikki?
So
when you first got married?
So from when he couldn't work in a regular job, because he has done part-time work from home, and when I say part-time, I'm talking about as part-time as you can get from home, but he felt like he was doing something. It was about 20 years altogether. And then
somebody came and said,
we've had years of people coming and saying, it's this wrong with you, it's this wrong with you, I'm just going to send you this over this email, have a read of this. Years, try this, try that, like with everything we've had. And I'm a little bit more open than Graham. He's a little bit more cynical. I think mine was out of desperation. Please could there be something so I could just have a bit of a life. But he's just like Mr. Grumpy. So yeah, it's I'm losing, what was the question?
Somebody came along and said, try these socks. Right. And he said, don't be stupid.
So he said, what's wrong with you? And he said, what, I've got something that can help you. And we were like, okay, what is it? And he told him, and Graham rolled his eyes. He said, it's ridiculous. And then he sent him some videos. And I think that one of the videos he sent was a lady called, I think her name was Loy. And she had like a vocal thing. And Graham showed that to me, and he said, I went, oh, that's rubbish. And then he said, no, if that's true, if this is real, maybe it'd be worth like trying it. So we kind of, yeah, we thought, okay, we'll just give it a go.
And there you were. And that, I'm sure lots of you have seen the video of Graham struggling up and down the stairs. Yeah.
That's where, because I actually pride myself on being dead inside. I always tell people, I don't cry, I don't get emotional. And I think that's because of my robotic, I'm in the mode, I've got to care for everyone, look after everyone. But that night, like there was just, it was just unbelievable. So yeah, he went on the insoles and couldn't be budged from the balance test. So anyone that's watching, there's a balance test that you do, and yeah, he so for someone who's got this weakness down the left side, a balance test without the tech, you just knock him over. He's got no strength there. But yeah, he did the balance test and couldn't move him, and he said, we were just like, couldn't believe it. And then he told him to put some socks on and walk down the corridor. So remember, Graham's using a walking stick all the time, so he walks down the corridor, and I'm like, literally got this corridor, and I go and sit on this little chair. The guy's in the doorway, and Graham just walks down the corridor, and like just like a normal person, like he kind of, you can, he had a, he leaned to the right, he was off balance, you could see that he wasn't straight, and he just walked down, and I just bawled. I mean, I just got like so emotional. And I don't cry because I'm dead inside. But yeah, I just couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe it. And the evening just went on, and we rang my daughter, and she's married, and we rang her, and I was like, oh God, you got to see this, you got to see this. And like I'm filming on FaceTime, and I filmed Graham walking up and down the hallway and then up the stairs. I think some of you have seen the video. Yeah, and I'm just like, oh, what's going on? My son is super techie, and he and she's like, is Adam done something? Has Adam made some like fake video? And I'm like, no, that's your dad. And Abby, so she's my eldest, she's 22, and like she's never ever seen her dad walk up the stairs without crawling, or even like crawling down. She's never, and none of my kids have. And like now they all take it for granted, we all do, but they've never ever seen that. And it, it was just the most incredible, just the most unbelievable thing. And it just
so for you now, he can cut up his own food, he can wash his own hair, he can make meals.
Oh my goodness, yeah, he can make a meal. And not just a meal where I go, that mince goes in there, can you throw I've chopped the onions, there's the mince, there's a tin tomato, there's a I'm talking like he can. It's not perfect, okay, and it does hurt him, it aches him, but he can, he's made a roast dinner. That's a pretty tricky, I mean, don't get me wrong, he gets very stressed when it comes to dishing out. Okay, that gets a little bit stressful. How many potatoes, how many things, but he is, because he's done quite a lot.
So your life is easier now.
Oh gosh, so much easier. And this is the thing, right? So the day he had the tech, that was amazing, because that was to do with balance. That was to do with him walking up and down the stairs, which is nothing, which isn't even the problem. Him using, the wheelchair, or him using a walking stick was the least of the problems. After the next few days, so the balance thing was instant. We know that that's instant for everybody, that they have an improved balance. But over the next few days, so what I forgot to mention, or haven't mentioned, is that Graham's day, so my typical day was, I would get up to go to work. I would typically leave about 6:45 in the morning, making sure that my youngest daughter's hair was done, because men can't do hair, sorry. But they would get themselves out. They'd sort their packed lunches out, they'd sort their clothes, they'd sort themselves out. Graham would drive them to school, drop them at the door. He'd come home and he'd sleep for 1 or 2 hours in the day. Sometimes if he's having a good day, then he might get a load of washing in that was just like shove it in and turn it on kind of thing. But that was it. And so a few days after he had the tech, he didn't need to sleep anymore, and he had a lot of brain fog. He has fibromyalgia, he has chronic fatigue, he has this partial paralysis, they call it a functional hemiparesis, but he couldn't brain. That's what he used to say, I can't brain. So within a few days that changed, and all of a sudden I could have, like, I don't know, it's like he was waking up, like, he was, I don't know, things were coming online again, and you could have, and it wasn't like we weren't connecting. We had great conversations. We're best friends. We had a good time. It wasn't anything like he wasn't all there or anything. He was just, just asleep. He was just oblivious to everything. And I think that was the point when I kind of realized that my life might change. And that was the point. So the emotion of the fucking being able to walk was amazing. But yeah, when he started to feel better and seeming to have more energy and could do more, I suddenly felt like, actually, maybe this isn't all going to fall on me anymore.
Oh, that must have been such an emotional moment.
Mm. Yeah, because like I said, I literally, sorry, I was in robot mode. I was almost like, when it first happened, I just flicked a switch and I was like, right, okay, I've got to be there. I've got to be a carer. I've got to look after him. I've got to look after everybody. And then, yeah, all of a sudden it was like, okay, well, maybe I have to do it all. Maybe I can share this with an equal partner, or, maybe we can share the load. And honestly, what really is, and anyone that knows us, Graham he says now, I don't know how I did it. How did I sit around and do nothing for 20 years? And don't get me wrong, he didn't do nothing. Like I say, we've had a couple of businesses, small businesses. We bought a bouncy castle hire company. Don't ask me why. I'm the only one that can do I'm freakishly strong. I can do all the bouncy castle stuff, but we bought it. I was like 4 months pregnant. Like, what was I thinking? Honestly, like, I can't do this. But but he also got his degree. He thought, okay, well, what if maybe I could work part-time, and then I could and I could get a degree. So he wasn't completely, you know, it was just that, you know, physically wasn't there, and, you know, wasn't able to do certain things, but, you know, the brain was still active. But yeah, so but now he's just like, I don't know how I did it. I don't know how I sat
What happens
around.
what happens on the 13th of December?
On the 13th of December, Graham starts his first real life going out of the house into a proper job with like an employer and everything, which is the first, you know, first time in 22 years. You know, he missed out on a career. You know, he's missed out on that. He hasn't been able to do that. And, you know, I saw about me being old fashioned. He's super old fashioned as well. He just wanted to go out and support his family, and you know, that's what he wanted to do. So yeah, he starts.
And you have been able to go out and do a bit of work yourself.
Yeah. So, well, I wear Vox myself, apart from the fact that I know that it's awesome, but I actually had an injury at work a couple of years ago, just after around the same time as Graham found Vox, and I actually need a knee replacement. And I've also got another like a high fluid pressure injury as well. So just before COVID, I had to stop working, which was actually a blessing, because I was a full-time teacher, and that is absolutely exhausting. But yeah, I've been back at work, but just picking up the odd day, which has been quite nice, and slightly terrifying as well. But yeah, it's been that's been quite good. But I don't go a day without Vox. I just, you know, anyway, and obviously Graham doesn't. But yeah, life's different now. Life's different, and you know, I can expect more of him, because I know he can, and he expects more of him. And I think that's the biggest thing, is that, you know, he is awake now, and he realizes what, you know, he can see how hard it's been for me to just carry on, and then you know, and I think that the Vox, it's the brain fog. It's just cleared the brain fog. That's been like one of the biggest things, because, you know, he's able to just, you know, support me and help me, which is, you know, not something I've had in our 26, whatever. I don't even know how many years now. 26 years of marriage. Yes, I was a baby when I got married.
You were, absolutely, yes. Yeah. Nikki, thank you. That's been absolutely extraordinary. As always, I'm in with this, but I'm even more in tears with you than most of the people that I've talked to. So what would you say to somebody who's thinking of coming and joining Vox Life?
Don't be a moron, just do it. No, do you know what? You never know. You just never know. You never know.
Yeah.
It can. I think sometimes, and I think this is where it was different for me, is, you know, being open is one thing. I'll try it, but it's more than that. You've really got to be in touch with your body, and you've got, you know, because I know for me, when I first started wearing the tech, I was like, well, I know what it's doing for Graham, that's awesome, but I don't know if I really need it, and, you know, I can't really feel any difference, and that's because I was in autopilot mode. I was just I wasn't in touch with how I was feeling, because it didn't matter how I was feeling, because you just have to carry on no matter what. But when I started to kind of connect with how I was sleeping, how I was feeling in the day, and things like that, then I've really felt the benefit, really. So just give it a go, and just be in touch with how you're feeling, and be open-minded, and, you know, just, you've got nothing to lose. Absolutely. And everything to gain.
Yes. Right. Well, thank you very much. And I'd just like to say to everybody that actually this tech isn't a magic bullet. Not everybody gets the remarkable results that Graham did, but it helps so many of us in smaller ways. So we don't